In the cold, windswept lands of Scandinavia, where fjords cut deep into ancient mountains and the northern lights dance across winter skies, a legend was born. His name was Ragnar Lothbrok, a warrior whose deeds would echo through the halls of Valhalla and whose sons would reshape the map of medieval Europe. Part man, part myth, Ragnar stands at the crossroads of history and legend, a figure who embodies the Viking Age itself, brutal, ambitious, and utterly unforgettable. To understand Ragnar, we must first understand the world that forged him. The Viking Age, spanning roughly from 793 to 1066, was a time of dramatic transformation across northern Europe. The Vikings, or Norsemen, were not merely raiders and pillagers, as popular imagination often suggests. They were farmers, traders, explorers, and settlers who developed sophisticated seafaring technology that allowed them to navigate both open oceans and shallow rivers with remarkable skill. Viking society was built on a foundation of honor, kinship, and fate. The Norse believed in a complex pantheon of gods led by Odin, the All-Father, god of war, wisdom, and death. Thor, the thunder god, protected mankind with his mighty hammer. Freya governed love and fertility. These weren't distant, abstract deities, but active participants in daily life. Vikings believed that fate, or word, was woven by the Norns, three mysterious beings who determined the destiny of gods and men alike. Yet paradoxically, they also believed in personal agency, that a warrior's courage and cunning could shape his own saga. Daily life in Viking Scandinavia revolved around the longhouse, the farm, and the sea. Communities were organized into clans and tribes, with jarls or earls ruling over territories. A man's worth was measured not just in silver and land, but in reputation. To die in battle was the highest honor, ensuring a place in Valhalla, Odin's great hall, where warriors would feast and fight until Ragnarok, the end of days. This cultural backdrop of honor, glory, and the ever-present shadow of fate shaped every Viking warrior, and none more so than Ragnar Lothbrok. Ragnar's origins are shrouded in the mists of saga and chronicle. According to the Norse sagas, particularly the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok and the tale of Ragnar's sons, he was born in Denmark or possibly Sweden in the early 9th century. His lineage was said to trace back to Odin himself, a claim that gave him divine legitimacy and marked him as a man of destiny. But Ragnar didn't begin his life wearing a crown. The sagas tell us he started as a farmer and warrior, a man of the people who rose through strength, cunning, and an unquenchable thirst for glory. His famous nickname, Lothbrok, meaning hairy breeches or shaggy pants, comes from one of his earliest legendary exploits. A venomous serpent had been set to guard the bower of Thora Borgarjort, daughter of the Swedish Earl Harald. Many warriors had tried and failed to slay the beast. Ragnar, displaying the cleverness that would define his career, fashioned trousers from animal hide and boiled them in tar and sand to create a protective armor. He killed the serpent and won Thora's hand in marriage. This tale, whether historical or mythical, established Ragnar's reputation as a man who could overcome impossible odds through both courage and intelligence. Thora bore Ragnar 2 sons, Eirik and Agnar, but tragedy struck when both died young in battle, attempting to avenge an insult to their father's honor. After Thora's death, Ragnar's path crossed with a mysterious woman named Aslaug, also called Kraka. She claimed to be the daughter of the legendary dragon slayer Sigurd and the Valkyrie Brynhild, making her one of the most prestigious bloodlines in Norse mythology. Ragnar tested her with riddles and challenges, and impressed by her wisdom and beauty, he made her his wife. But before Aslaug, there was Lagertha. According to the Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus, writing in the 12th century, Lagertha was a fierce shield maiden, a woman warrior who fought alongside men in battle. When Ragnar came to Norway to avenge the death of his grandfather, he found Lagertha among the warriors. She had placed a bear and a great hound to guard her home. Ragnar slew both beasts and won her heart. Lagertha fought beside Ragnar in numerous battles, proving herself as deadly with a spear as any man. Though their marriage eventually ended, Lagertha remained a powerful figure, ruling her own territory and even coming to Ragnar's aid in later conflicts. Her story, whether entirely factual or embellished, represents the remarkable, if rare, role women could play in Viking society. Ragnar and Aslog's union produced the sons who would become even more famous than their father. Ivar the Boneless, the eldest and most cunning, was said to suffer from a condition that made his bones brittle, possibly osteogenesis imperfecta. Yet what he lacked in physical strength, he more than compensated for with brilliant tactical mind and ruthless ambition. He would become one of the most feared Viking commanders in history. Bjorn Ironside, whose nickname suggested invulnerability in battle, would lead expeditions as far as the Mediterranean, raiding the coasts of Spain, France, and Italy, and eventually becoming king of Sweden. Hvitserk, whose name means white shirt, was a fierce warrior who fought alongside his brothers in the conquest of England. Sigurd Snake in the Eye bore a distinctive mark in his eye that resembled a serpent biting its own tail, a symbol connecting him to his grandfather Sigurd the Dragon Slayer and to the great world serpent Jormungandr of Norse mythology. Ubba, sometimes called Ubba in English sources, would become a powerful leader in his own right, ruling territories in England and playing a crucial role in the Viking settlement of the British Isles. Together, these sons would fulfill their father's legacy and exceed it, but that story begins with Ragnar's own legendary exploits. Ragnar's greatest fame came from his raids on Christian Europe. In an age when most Vikings were content to raid coastal monasteries and villages, Ragnar thought bigger. According to the sagas, he was among the first to sail west to England, striking at the wealthy Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia. These weren't mere hit-and-run raids. Ragnar brought fleets of longships, the sleek, dragon-prowed vessels that could navigate both open sea and shallow rivers, allowing Vikings to strike deep inland where no enemy expected them. Picture the scene. The gray waters of the North Sea parting before dozens of longships, their square sails billowing, their crews of hardened warriors singing songs of glory and death. The English coast appears on the horizon, green and unsuspecting. Monasteries, rich with gold and silver accumulated over centuries, stood virtually undefended. The monks had never imagined that anyone would dare attack houses of God, but to the Vikings, these were simply wealthy targets, and the Christian God held no power over them. Ragnar's raids sent shockwaves through Christian Europe and opened the floodgates for the Viking invasions that would follow. But Ragnar's most audacious exploit was yet to come. In the year 845, as recorded in the Frankish annals of St. Bertin, a Viking fleet of over 100 ships sailed up the Seine River toward Paris. At their head was Ragnar Lothbrok. The Frankish kingdom, once mighty under Charlemagne, had been divided among his grandsons and was weakened by internal strife. King Charles the Bald, ruling the western portion, watched in horror as the Viking fleet approached his capital. Paris in 845 was not yet the fortified city it would later become. Ragnar's forces landed and laid siege, and the Franks found themselves unable to mount an effective defense. The Vikings pillaged the surrounding countryside, and disease broke out in the Frankish camp. Desperate, Charles made a fateful decision. Rather than fight, he would pay the Vikings to leave. He offered Ragnar 7,000 livers of silver, an enormous sum, equivalent to several years of royal revenue. Ragnar accepted, loaded his ships with treasure, and sailed away. This payment, known as Danegeld, set a dangerous precedent. It showed that Viking raiders could extract wealth not just through plunder, but through the threat of violence, and it encouraged further raids across Europe. Yet Ragnar's story, like all great sagas, was destined for a tragic end. In his later years, perhaps driven by pride or by the Viking belief in fate, Ragnar decided to raid England once more. This time he sailed with only a small fleet, either underestimating his enemies or deliberately seeking a glorious death. A great storm scattered his ships, and Ragnar was captured by King Ella of Northumbria, a ruthless ruler who saw the legendary Viking as both a threat and an opportunity. According to the sagas, Ella ordered Ragnar thrown into a pit filled with venomous serpents. As the snakes struck again and again, Ragnar sang his death song, recounting his victories and his life of glory. His final words, as recorded in the saga, were chilling. How the little pigs would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers. It was a prophecy and a curse. The little pigs were his sons, and Ragnar knew they would come for vengeance. And come they did. In 865, just a few years after Ragnar's death, a massive Viking force landed in England. Known to history as the Great Heathen Army, it was led by Ragnar's sons, Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, Hvitserk, and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, along with other Viking leaders. This wasn't a raid, it was an invasion, a campaign of conquest and revenge. The army swept through England, capturing the city of York, which they renamed Jorvik, and defeating kingdom after kingdom. King Ella of Northumbria, the man who had killed Ragnar, was captured in battle. The sagas describe his execution in gruesome detail. The Blood Eagle, a ritual killing where the victim's ribs were cut from the spine and spread like wings, and the lungs pulled out. Whether this actually happened or is saga embellishment, the message was clear. Ragnar's sons had avenged their father, and they had done so in a way that would be remembered forever. The great heathen army didn't stop with vengeance. Ivar became king of Dublin, establishing a Norse kingdom in Ireland that would last for generations. Bjorn Ironside led expeditions to the Mediterranean, his name becoming legend across Europe. Ubba settled in East Anglia, becoming one of the first Viking rulers to integrate with Anglo-Saxon society. The sons of Ragnar carved up England and beyond, creating a Norse presence in Britain that would fundamentally alter its history and culture. So was Ragnar Lothbrok real? The truth is complex. There is no contemporary record of a single Viking leader named Ragnar who did all the things attributed to him in the sagas. However, his sons, particularly Ivar and Bjorn, are well-documented historical figures. Most historians believe that Ragnar represents a composite of several Viking leaders from the 9th century. Their deeds and legends merged into one mythic figure. There may have been a real Ragnar, a powerful jarl or king whose exploits form the kernel of the legend, but over time, other stories were added, other victories claimed in his name. What matters is not whether every detail is historically accurate, but what Ragnar represents. He embodies the Viking Age itself, the sudden explosion of Norse expansion across Europe, the terror and fascination they inspired, the complex culture of honor and fate that drove them. Ragnar is the archetypal Viking, the warrior king who claimed descent from gods, who challenged the greatest powers of his age, and whose legacy lived on through his sons. In the end, Ragnar Lothbrok's greatest achievement may be his immortality. While kings and emperors of his era have faded into obscurity, Ragnar's name still resonates. He appears in medieval sagas, in chronicles, in modern novels and television series. He represents something timeless, the individual who defies fate while accepting it, who seeks glory knowing it will lead to death, who builds a legacy not in stone, but in story. From the frozen fjords of Scandinavia to the halls of Paris, from the monasteries of England to the throne rooms of Sweden, Ragnar Lothbrok's shadow still falls. He is myth and man, legend and history, forever sailing west toward glory, forever dying in the snake pit, forever living in the sagas. The old boar may have suffered, but his roar still echoes through the ages.